Amidst the horrors of Somalia, these men stand accused of atrocities.
I was beaten, and even they broke my teeth.
Yet Canada took them in. A Fifth Estate Special Edition next.
I'm asking.
Explain this.
The Fifth Estate. Tonight, a special Fifth Estate investigation. Out of the suffering of Somalia, a haunting presence in Canada.
The Canadian public should know this, that the war criminals are coming into this country and the government is not doing anything about it.
They were the henchmen of a brutal dictator. They stand accused of crimes against humanity. Now they're claiming to be legitimate refugees.
Potential war criminals, we all know that they've slipped through the crack.
From the killing fields of northern Somalia to the streets of Toronto, Victor Malarick exposes a legacy of horror and a trail of deception.
I have never did anything wrong to any Somali.
Good evening. I'm Victor Malarick. We've all recoiled in horror at the images of the dead and dying children of Somalia. It's an appalling and all too familiar litany of famine and starvation, but it's played out against a background of tribal warfare and cold-blooded Cold War politics. Tonight, in a special full edition program, we're going to show you how and why Somalia has become the latest hell on earth, and how some of the men responsible for that hell have managed to escape to Canada. They are the men who served Somalia's deposed dictator, Siad Barre, and helped him brutalize a nation while most of the world looked the other way. In the next hour, we'll reveal their secret escape routes through the United States, and we'll document how unprepared the Canadian government is to deal with men who stand accused of crimes against humanity. It's a story some people don't want you to see. In a forgotten corner of northern Somalia, this place is called the Valley of Death. The remains of 7,000 children, women, and men lie where they fell, mowed down by Somali government troops 4 years ago. It was one of Africa's bloodiest civil wars. In the fields nearby, instead of harvesting badly needed food, brigades of boys called Young Pioneers dig up a deadly crop. Landmines. This week alone, they've found 200. And all too often, the mines explode without warning. And all too often, there are victims. 57 casualties just in this hospital. It's the children who hurt the most. 8-year-old Awil was tending goats when a landmine blew off his hand and left him blind. Blind tribal hatred has left Somalia in ruins. The people of the north, from a clan called the Isaacs, became targets of a war waged by a dictator, Siad Barre. He was from the south, a member of a clan called the Darads. In the end, all Somalis suffered at the hands of Siad Barre. The luckiest ones fled to refugee camps like this one in Ethiopia, and even as far away as Canada. About 30,000 Somalis have come since the fighting began, but the victims have not entirely escaped their persecutors. 2 years ago, Abdi Ali Nur Mohammed came to Canada as a refugee, claiming he was persecuted in Somalia. But back home, he's known as Judge Ali Nur. He sentenced dozens of people to death.
This man, he was a murderer. Like he was a killer. He was a dangerous man.
Not far away from Judge Nur, another of Barry's men, Mohammed Hassan Ismail Faarax. He also arrived in Canada 2 years ago as a refugee. But high school students held in these military cells remember him as the police lieutenant colonel who brutally interrogated them.
He tortured me by himself. I was sentenced to death, and they put me in a jail. I was being tortured, like electrical shocks, beating.
And this man, the most feared of Barry's men in Canada, Yusuf Abdi Ali Toke, another refugee claimant. He works as a security guard in Toronto. Back in Somalia, he wore a different uniform as one of Barry's military commanders. In the tiny village of Gibile, people say he maimed, tortured, and terrorized them, and had more than 100 people executed. Goad Muse escaped from Gibile and made it to Canada.
This man put human beings into a blazing fire. He made vehicles run over other people. I cannot understand how a government with respect for human rights can give protection to such a man.
Protection or not, the presence of Barry's men has ignited clan tensions in Canada.
Torture me. There are those people who torture me.
Many Somalis here remain bitterly divided along clan lines. We asked to meet with victims of torture. Instead, Somalis from several clans came. The meeting exploded into a shouting match between those Somalis who want to forget the past and those who can't forget.
Anti-Siad Barre army came. They opened fire indiscriminately. I saw so many classmates dying in front of me. They torture us. They keep us in a military base. And whenever I remember my friends dying in front of me, it keeps me. I can't even talk to that situation now.
There shouldn't be any witch hunt, as has been going on, for the Nazis, I think we as Somalis, we need to be forgive and forget.
History repeats itself. If we don't take a stand now and condemn it, what happened in the time of Siad Barre will come back again.
A second Barry official in Canada was one of his senior police officers in the Criminal Investigations Department. Mohammed Hassan Ismail Farah arrived in November 1991. He told immigration officials he was with the Somali anti-drug squad for 17 years. In Somalia, Farah was a police officer, but his war was against dissidents, not drugs. In 1984, Barry arrested hundreds of high school students for protesting against his regime. 7 boys were taken here to these military barracks in Hargeisa and were sentenced to death.
They broke into our house at night. I was pulled from my bed and taken to a place near the military headquarters. Faarax was in charge.
Abdi Mohammed Ismail was one of those boys. Now in London, England, he never forgot what Farah did to him.
He took pliers to take out my tooth. He said, if you don't answer all our questions, we will pull out all your teeth. Then he pulled the other tooth, and I lost consciousness.
Ismail had no trouble recognizing his torturer.
Yes. This one is a man, Faarax.
Another of the 7 condemned teenagers now lives in Toronto, not far from his torturer. Yusuf Mohammed Isse was 15 when he faced Farah in a jail cell. What kind of ways were you tortured?
They tied me up like this. They put my hands and my legs together, and I was tied up at least 24 hours. And they hit me. Something I felt like a bird of the rifle on my cheek.
Is this the man who tortured you?
Yes, he's Mohammed Hassan Faarax.
Only a worldwide campaign by Amnesty International saved Yusuf, Ismail, and 4 other boys from the firing squad. The 7th was executed. Farah wouldn't be interviewed. His lawyer says Faarax was not in Somalia in the summer of 1984 when the students were tortured. Faarax also told immigration officials his wife and 2 children are still in Somalia, but we spotted them with him in Toronto. His wife arrived here as a refugee a full year before Faarax did. Despite these discrepancies in his story, Faarax got to stay. He was declared a credible refugee last January and got his work permit a month later. Judge Ali Noor, police interrogator Faarax, and Army Commander Toke are among a dozen of Siad Barry's officials, friends, and relatives now living in Canada. Even Barry's eldest son, Ali Mohammed Siad, a colonel in his father's army, found a new home here. When we return, we'll examine how they made it into Canada through the United States. Judge Noor came to Canada through the U.S. Police interrogator Faarax spent 7 months in the States. Army Commander Toke was back in the U.S. for more training at an Air Force base in Mississippi for 5 months in 1990, before he crossed into Canada. Abdi Ali Noor gave his real name, said he was a military judge, and got in. Mohammed Hassan Ismail Faarax used his real name, said he was a senior police officer, and also got in. Yusuf Abdi Ali Toke used his real name, said he was a military commander, and he walked right in. Immigration officials also seemed reluctant to pursue the case of police interrogator Mohammed Faarax. Faarax was about to be accepted as a refugee last March. That was too much for Ahmed Samatar, a community leader. He took surveillance photographs and gathered testimony. He alerted the department, and Faarax's hearing was delayed. But Samatar wonders if immigration really cares. Now you have a number of witnesses. Has the immigration department come to you and said, let us talk to them?
Not yet, no.
They haven't pre-interviewed them?
Not yet.
What does that say to you?
They're not interested.
Police Lieutenant Colonel Mohammed Hassan Faarax is scheduled to appear for his second refugee hearing on October 14th. His case could drag on. As for military commander Yusuf Abdi Ali Toke, the immigration department says they still can't find him. So he's still punching his clock as a security guard in Toronto, marking time in his newfound home.
The Fifth Estate